this is kind of a nesting. So you have the top level, then you have some lower levels and some lower levels down below that, each with its own state chart. Now, in reality, if I were doing state charts seriously, I would start looking at some of the state chart tools like UML and stuff. I mentioned this morning, UML system have tools. She was mentioning back when she was talking about clips and things like that. Some of them are open source, free, that will allow you to draw these kind of maps. State charts, any questions on state charts? Oh, well, you want to come up here?
Just wanted to listen to you.
An expert, true expert is here. Trying to introduce them to state charts, telling them, get a tool eventually. You understand how to do the state diagrams? So you might get a sheet of paper and try and draw one of these. It's hard to figure out how to put states together, and this is very simple, but even the simple is hard to do. I was going to skip over the scenario-based testing.
Yes, combine it. That should be another separate.
The events, things that move you from one state to another state. Because that's going to be how you define some of the tests. You need to know the events. Those will be your elements. The volume, you're going to have a group that says on, probably makes the sound come on, state or not volume, sound. You're going to hit a different button to take each one of those.
When we click here, say that now we move to the next category.
Everybody listen up, see what they came up with. Again, this is hard stuff.
Okay, this is a state chart that we after we study the games, the toys. So the games always start with either state. There's no on-off button.
That's different than the one I'm at, which is the one you guys were working on. So it's a slightly different set of states.
So we find that we found if you press the yes button, then you go to the main page to display. Other button it doesn't respond to other button or key. Okay. Once inside in this state main page, when we press the speed up key or speed down key, we have certain new stage where the display transition speed is being increased or decreased.
Yeah, and an enhancement I might make, as soon as it does that, it kind of takes you back to the main page.
Okay.
So
Try to draw the line there.
yeah, you can just draw a line back down and there, and yeah, that helps to understand it, because you're not kind of stuck in the sound going up or down. Yep, there you go. Okay, good.
So at this stage, we also find out that if we turn on the switch, there's a backlight and sound switch. So small, you can turn left and right. Then you can turn on the backlight or the sound. Either you can turn on or turn off. Okay. Then when you press the yes button, the game started.
Right, takes you to a new game.
Yes, new stage.
Good.
So we stop here. We never elaborate or illustrate the detail of this stage because we don't have our time. But we also found out there's another button called reset button. It's a very small hole.
Yep.
And when we found that when we press the button, you go direct to the start program stage.
Resets everything.
Yeah.
That's good. And in the little informal nomenclature that I came up with, if you kind of drew that as kind of the colored box with the squared rounded edges, that says there'd be a set of states down below this. So could you do a set of tests based upon this then? Remember how does it do that?
Yes.
So,
Of course, we will do the testing, performance test, whether it's follow exactly.
along the transition.
Yes. And we can do some testing here. It's very obvious whether there's a backlight or not. Then we have, okay, here we also can do one test here. We leave the device or the toy for 60 seconds. The display will be turned off, and it will go into the middle stage, sleeping mode stage. Okay. So
It's
this
kind of a
thing is-
performance
yes.
timing test. Very good, very good. And it's hard to do this. Anybody else got another diagram they want to share? I know everybody's embarrassed and things like that. By the way, congratulations, it's pretty good. And I'm not going to make everybody share. We've got a nice one up here. No, but this is hard stuff. And you know, again, you sit in these classes and things like that, and I show you diagrams and things like that, and it all looks easy, right? But when you start doing it, it's kind of hard. And so in the real world, when you would start doing this, you'd probably want to sketch it out a little bit and then refine it and then maybe put it in a tool or something like that to get those understandings going. And again, in class, we don't give you enough time to do all those kinds of things the way you would do it in the real world, where you hopefully would have a little bit more time. Instead of 15 minutes, you'd have an hour doing that. And this is the beginnings of the kind of things that Ina was talking this morning about in the model-based test development that a lot of us would like you to move to. But if you just try and jump right away to the full-up tools and systems like that, my experience is it's hard. This is hard. But if you start here, crawl a little bit, then you can move to those other things. And really the way to handle these things is the tools, because they're automated, allow you to deal with the complexity on a lot of these things. And that's, the tools then do a lot of the really hard work for you on these things. And those of us that have worked in this, you can get a lot of good, there's even tools now on these transitions. They'll do the walks for you. They will, and even generate out the automated scripts to help you do these things. Which I find kind of cool, right? And you know, again, but you have to change your way of thinking about these things on that. Any other questions? Okay, so I am running a little behind because we spent so much time this morning working on the risk-based and the exploratory stuff, but as I said, I kind of tailor each class to where I find that you're at on things. So I want to move along on some of these things. And the next section, I'll move ahead a couple. Some other things on state maps, whole systems, architectures, data flows. We were kind of working the control flow, transactions within the system, finite state maps and menus, time flow even, and some error things. I've seen all those areas used with slightly different notations and more advanced notations to do stuff. Some of the books that talked about that, and I apologize, I don't have your book in there, but I's actually got a good book. But these are basic starting point books. You could go to, what's the name of your book?
Model-driven testing.
Model-driven testing, which I don't have my bookshelf yet. Bad me. But I'm sorry, because now I could have had an autographed copy. But this has been an established technique that's around for a while. We're now getting the tools and some of the standards like the OMG UML testing profile to really support this stuff. So it's starting to mature a lot. And so as you all consider where you want to take your companies in Malaysia testing, this is the kind of thing that you got to start looking at and slowly working towards. It's one of the things I've been working on. This section, I'm going to skip through just a little bit, but you got it in the notes. And we kind of talked about it a little bit this morning with what some of you were doing in the exploratory. And that's the notion of test stories or tours and scenarios, which again we talk about in the ISO 29119. There's a section on that in there. I'd like to push ahead since we've got like about an hour left. But some of the important things I would like to hit on that is this notion of tours. I mentioned the concept of soap operas that Hans Budwalla talks about. That's kind of a specialized tour or beginnings of tours. James Whitaker talks about tours. And the basic concept is even kind of a higher level than the test attack patterns that we talked about. And so they're now defining kind of generalized tours that take you through the software that can be applied to different kinds of systems. And that's in Whitaker's book on these. I call them kind of common themes. And they kind of start with the nominal testing, which is what most of you do. We took the chart down on the requirements stuff. But you do the nominal kind of paths through the testing. And again, that's necessary, but in my mind not sufficient, because if you just stop there, you miss lots of other things. So I always like to go into the stress testing mode. And the reason I said we don't want to hit this too hard is several of you, when we were doing the exploratory testing, you were talking about stress testing, pushing both buttons at once, doing other things, doing really rapid inputs. Those are various kinds of stories that are stressing potentially the system. And so I pretty much in my testing go quickly to the stress kinds of stories and tours. Why, as I mentioned earlier, it kind of follows the heuristic of the 80-20 rule, where we know about 80% of the code only gets used 20% of the time. So that means there's a lot of bugs hiding in there, okay? And in this exploration, we're trying to find those. So I would start trying to use stress testing to push into that 80% and find those unusual cases. There's things beyond the stress. That's the soap opera I've mentioned on that, and that can be pretty useful. We talked about that already. The security testing area of stories and things like that. I've been researching that. We've been doing some of the things in the model-based. The security bugs hide in various places. Whitaker's work talks about file inputs and outputs, the network communications, things like spoofing, fuzzing, the registry inputs and outputs. This is a classic area to go and attack, because if you can get in through the user input and the password, you've been hacked. And what we know, by the way, an awful lot of people use really bad passwords. There's PK crack and tools like that that will spit out all these common passwords, and you can use them in your testing, and you know the user ID and you keep guessing on that. I've cracked into various systems with those kind of tools. Now, at this point, I always have to give the standard kind of disclaimer, particularly in this story area of security attacks. Do not go home and do this tonight on your favorite website. I don't know about Malaysia, but in the United States, it's illegal to do that. And sort of like I can tell you how to drive your car 150 kilometers an hour, but you're probably going to get a ticket. But as good testers, okay, when we're given a system to test and told, oh yeah, there may be some security things there, and we've got a registry, I would spend a little bit of time doing some kind of security story testing, because it's now in my charter of something I want to worry about. But please don't do something that's illegal, that's going to get you in trouble. I've had some friends that got in trouble doing that. But it's a necessary kind of specialized story area that a lot of us want to see used.